Thank you, Calvin, for these autumn leaves on a rather chilly morning. Almost feels like winter to me, at least on my bicycle. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Concord's all-online worship service. My name is Michael Leuchtenberger, and I get to serve this congregation as its senior minister. Thank you for joining us this morning. Sunny, bright, cold, and yet still fall. We are an inclusive church where we support each other on our own and our shared spiritual journeys. We celebrate diversity of lifestyles and religious beliefs. We embrace the beauty within each of us and yet acknowledge the imperfections that make us human. In other words, you're all welcome, come, and I'm so glad we can be together despite the need to remain physically apart. I'm especially happy to welcome first-time or returning visitors. If you are a visitor, I hope you will find our community eager to welcome you and respectful of the path that has brought you here this morning. It would be wonderful if you could introduce yourself on the chat so that we know that you are out there. For a complete listing of church events and news, please click the link at the bottom of any of our web pages to request either a copy of our weekly e-bulletin or a copy of Parish Notes, our monthly newsletter. And you can also find us on Facebook or in our YouTube channel. So, if you were here in person, I would just say, hey, quick show of hands. Who has already voted? Oh, all right, I see you. All right, that's good. So you've already voted, that's excellent. How about who has plans set for how to vote and how to do the voting? Great, that's the rest of you, excellent. All right, that leaves two of you out there. I can see you, I know who you are. All right, so please let me know, or your neighbor know, or anybody know if there's anything that we can do to make it easier for you to vote, to get to the polls, to apply for whatever forms you need to get your mail-in ballots. I don't get to vote, so it's extra important to me. I want to make up for that by making sure everybody else around me is voting on November 3rd or before. So please take that as seriously as possible. It matters. It matters to me. All right, now please join me in a moment singing our children's blessing. We usually sing this towards the end or when we're singing our children out, so we modified the lyrics just ever so slightly. The modified lyrics will be on your screen. Let's sing and body your spirit is risen.
May our minds be open to new learning. May our lips bring truth into the world. May our hearts know love and our hands do the work of justice as we grow today in peace. As we grow today in peace. May our minds be open to new learning. May our lips bring truth into the world. May our hearts know love and our hands do the work of justice as we grow today in peace. As we grow today in peace.
Please join me now with the words of our covenant found on your screen. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its call. Let this be our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Whoever you are, wherever you are on your life journey, come, let us worship together. And I invite you to join me in lighting our chalice here in the sanctuary, or if you have a chalice at home, a candle, get it out and get it lit in your own space.
up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, vision, and joy. Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, vision, and joy.
Did you notice those beautiful flowers? Thank you, Susan and Ken Kerber, for providing them week after week. It is such a joy always on Saturday to receive that gift and place them on our chancel. Now please repeat after me. It is a blessing to be. It is a blessing to be. It is a blessing to be here. It is a blessing to be here. It is a blessing to be here now. It is a blessing to be here now. It is a blessing to be here now together. It is a blessing to be here now together. Thank you for your willingness to surrender to a feeling of gratitude for being, simply being. Surrender to being here in our bodies just the way we are, supported by the elements, the ground, the air, fire, water, kept alive by our beating hearts and our breathing lungs. Will you take a breath with me? Will you move your attention to whatever steadies your body wherever you are? And will you listen? Will you listen to the beating of your hearts within yourself? Thank you for being here now, for your willingness to surrender to the present moment, aware of the past, conscious of the future, yet living the only moment we can actually experience, the now. And thank you for coming together, for letting go of the illusion of disconnection, for surrendering to a knowing you are not alone, we are not alone, a knowing of the greater whole beyond the bankruptcy of individualism, for embracing the power of promise and the power and the promise of community. It is a blessing to be here now together. So I've decided to make this simple meditation my prayer twice a week. No, twice a day, in fact, for the next 2 weeks. Once in the morning and once around 2:30 in the afternoon, or thereabouts. I'm curious if you will maybe join me in that experiment, just twice a week, right? Twice a day. See if it fits in here, and if you will join me from that experiment, and if you do so, then please let me know how that fared for you, if there's anything that came up for you. So let us repeat our call and response one last time. Please repeat after me. It is a blessing to be. It is a blessing to be. It is a blessing to be here. It is a blessing to be here. It is a blessing to be here now. It is a blessing to be here now. It is a blessing to be here now together. It is a blessing to be here now together. May it be so indeed. Our second hymn really serves as an introduction to our time for all ages. It will be number 1012 in our teal hymnals, When I Am Frightened.
When I am frightened, will you reassure me? When I'm uncertain, will you hold my hand? Will you be strong for me? Sing to me quietly. Will you share some of your stories with me? If you will show me compassion, then I may learn to care as you do. Then I may learn to care. When I am angry, will you still embrace me? When I am thoughtless, will you understand? Will you believe in me, stand by me willingly? Will you share some of your questions with me? If you will show me acceptance, then I may learn to give as you do. Then I may learn to give. When I am troubled, will you listen to me? When I am lonely, will you be my friend? Will you be there for me, comfort me tenderly? Will you share some of your feelings with me? If you will show me commitment, then I may learn to love as you do. Then I may learn to love.
Thank you, Kate, for joining me in singing this song here this morning, and thanks to all of you for singing wherever you are at this moment. Here comes our time for all ages.
One day, Taylor decided to build something new, something special, something amazing. Taylor was so proud. But then, out of nowhere, things came crashing down. The chicken was the first to notice. Cluck, cluck, what a shame. I'm so sorry this happened. Let's talk about it. Cluck, cluck. But Taylor didn't feel like talking, so the chicken left. Next came the bear. Grr, roar, how horrible. I bet you feel so angry. Let's shout about it. Grr, roar, grr. But Taylor didn't feel like shouting, so the bear left. The elephant knew just what to do. Trumpa-duh, I can fix this. We just need to remember exactly the way things were. But Taylor didn't feel like remembering, so the elephant also left. One by one they came. The hyena, let's laugh about it. The ostrich, gulp, let's hide and pretend nothing happened. The kangaroo, tis, tis, what a mess. Let's throw it all away. And the snake, shh, let's go knock down someone else's. But Taylor didn't feel like doing anything with anybody. So eventually, they all left until Taylor was alone. In the quiet, Taylor didn't even notice the rabbit, but it moved closer and closer until Taylor could feel its warm body. Together they sat in silence until Taylor said, "Please stay with me." The rabbit listened. The rabbit listened as Taylor talked. The rabbit listened as Taylor shouted. The rabbit listened as Taylor remembered and laughed. The rabbit listened to Taylor's plans to hide, to throw everything away, to ruin things for someone else. Through it all, the rabbit never left. And when the time was right, the rabbit listened to Taylor's plans to build again. "I can't wait," Taylor said. "It's going to be amazing."
Let us now take a moment in our service, in our lives on this Sunday morning to acknowledge all the joys and the sorrows we carry in our hearts. Please join me in the spirit of prayer. Spirit of life and delight, help us listen deeply and hear the laughter of friends. Spirit of open-heartedness and perspective, help us listen deeply and hear the fear behind anger. Spirit of resilience and compassion, help us listen and hear the sorrow of those who are grieving and of our own wounded soul. Spirit of curiosity and care, help us listen deeply and hear the dreams of our children. Spirit of mindfulness, help us listen and hear the tension in our own bodies, as well as the joy waiting to be released. Spirit of life, help us listen deeply and hear wherever we are now together. Amen. Let us to open our hearts to a version of Spirit of Life, first in Spanish and then in English, sung by All Souls Church, Unitarian Universalist in Washington, D.C.
Thursday.
For a while now, I have been intrigued by the concept of surrender, of letting go, of observing what happens when you pull back from trying to force a particular outcome, particular feeling, or a specific physical sensation. The promise is attractive, simple, and clear. By surrendering to what is the pressure cooker of fear and anxiety that has built up within us over a lifetime, we'll find a release and ultimately cease to exist. We are no longer at the mercy of the world and our reaction to it. In the Buddhist language, we remove the pressure of involuntary reactivity. It shows up so frequently in my closest relationships. And I'll get into an intense argument with someone, keep spiraling and escalating. I get irritated, annoyed, frustrated, angry. And yet, every now and then, I manage to pause for just a moment, perhaps aided by a de-escalating posture or tone of voice on the other side, and it suddenly hits me. This is ridiculous. We're no longer arguing about anything relevant or solvable. We're simply reacting because we can. Stop. Now. Breathe. Smile. Doesn't always work, but when it does, life suddenly feels so much lighter and liberated. The feelings of relief and happiness are palpable. My mind begins to calm. The thought machine that has been churning out thought after vicious thought is slowing down, now that the feelings are softening. So interesting how one intense feeling can spawn hundreds, even thousands of thoughts, right? In the moment, but over a lifetime or over a long period of time as well. And to find a way to tame those thoughts that interfere with our longing for some semblance of inner peace, means we need to find or figure out what to do with the feelings that drive them. As David Hawkins writes in my new favorite book, or favorite book of the moment, Letting Go, The Pathway of Surrender, he writes, we carry around with us a huge reservoir of accumulated negative feelings, attitudes, and beliefs. Huge reservoir, right? And the accumulated pressure makes us miserable and is the basis of many of our illnesses and problems. Later he continues, if we take a close look at human life, we see that it is essentially one long, elaborate struggle to escape our inner fears and expectations that have been projected upon the world. It is not thoughts or facts that are painful, but is the feelings that accompany them. That's what he wrote. Research known as the Gray-Lavalette scientific theory shows that feeling tones organize thoughts and memory. Right? So the way our thoughts and memory are organized, they're kind of associated with feeling tones. That's what they mention. Thoughts are filed in the memory bank according to the various shades of feelings associated with those thoughts. Therefore, when we relinquish or let go of a feeling, we're also freeing ourselves from all those associated thoughts. And Hawkins claims that the great value of knowing how to surrender is that any and all feelings can be let go of at any time and any place in an instant. And it can be done continuously and effortlessly. Well, he had my attention there. It definitely did get my attention. If true, How incredibly liberating, how freeing, how worthy of further exploration. So how do we get there? How do we learn to surrender, to let go? So many opportunities to practice, right? So many places to start. So how about body image? I've shared before that at the time I left for college, my 11-year-old younger sister began to struggle with anorexia. It was a perplexing challenge. I did not know how to be helpful, still don't know, and I considered it a problem far from my own experience. I'm not anorexic. And yet, over the past few years, I have known or I have noticed my own hidden struggles around food. Intellectually, I understand that our culture considers my body shape healthy and unconcerning. So why, again and again, do I catch myself tucking in my belly, unconsciously pulling it in to make it look slimmer? And doing so even when I'm alone, at home, at night. When nobody's watching, nobody cares. And yet more perplexing, why do I not let go of the tension once I notice? And especially so late at night when I'm in the kitchen looking for a snack or sometimes a whole meal, feeling full already, aware at some level that no extra food is needed, but fooling myself by tucking in that belly. Odd. A few months ago, a combination of listening to some Dhamma talk, some Buddhist meditation talk, and my own meditation practice, I finally at least became aware of what I was doing, the tension I was holding, what I was doing. And ever since, I have begun to practice, at least, letting go. Literally letting go of the tension in my belly, that stomach area, letting it expand as far as it will go. And more importantly, and with more difficulty, I've tried to surrender the judgment and the self-esteem, both conscious and unconscious, that are somehow attached to all this. It wasn't some on-off switch experience, that's for sure, but when I do manage to surrender and accept my body as it happens to be at any given moment, the tension noticeably shifts. It makes eating more relaxing and joyful. And most surprisingly, I find it easier to eat mindfully, and seem to eat fewer late-night snacks now that guilt, shame, and pride are less a part of the picture. Listening to the sensations in our body will always go deeper if we're able to surrender and let go of chasing a particular sensation, while at the same time staying alert and keeping our attention focused. That's the strange paradox, right? We want to pay attention and go deeper, and yet to actually go deeper, kind of have to let go of that effort. Like trying to open a door, and yet the more forcefully we try to pull the handle open, the less the door will actually open. And so the only way to get in is to stop pulling with so much force, to let go of the force altogether, perhaps. Suddenly, while our attention is still on the door may open. Listening, of course, is the theme of our month. Deep listening. Listening within listening to the earth. Those were the topics of our last 2 Sundays. And now listening to others. Listening to others, a skill and practice that feels as critical as it is often missing in our contemporary world. As Will Roger tells it, it is not unusual for a person in Congress or elsewhere really to get up to speak, say nothing, have nobody listen, and then have everybody disagree. Thank you, Lynn, for chuckling at this. Lynn actually is here in the sanctuary along with my son Noah, who's running the tech deck, although I should probably pretend to point this way because I don't know, never mind. That's a total distraction here. All right, I'm surrendering into this moment. It is really strange trying to tell something amusing when there's nobody out there reacting. Maybe I should try not to do that. As meditation teacher and wise woman Tara Brach mentioned in her podcast, Listening with an Awake Heart, there is no limit on how well you can listen. There's no limit on how well you can listen. And I claim that how far and deep we can push that limit is directly related to our ability to treat listening as an act of surrender. Take a moment and close your eyes. Now bring someone to mind who you consider a really good listener. Who is that in your life? Is that a spouse, a co-worker, a friend, a minister? Perhaps there are not that many. Perhaps you have a whole group of them. And as you imagine them listening to you, what characteristics stand out? What makes them a good listener? A listener you're drawn to, a listener that makes you feel afterwards that you've really been heard. What qualities can you point to? Well, if we were in person, I would ask you to share them out loud, and I would suspect I would hear words like, and yeah, you can open your eyes again, full attention, respect, quality of no interruptions, maybe no unsolicited advice, trust. Yes, trust is important, right? Empathy, space, non-judgmental, non-anxious, self-awareness, interest, curiosity, calm. Well, the list goes on. I don't know. Lynn, do you want to add one? Curiosity was one for you. Great. I like those qualities, most certainly. I believe many people, perhaps most people do. And turns out when people are asked how good a listener they are, everybody considers themselves above average, which is another one of those interesting ideas. And it's not just in Lake Wobegon, I believe. Like when an old man wondered whether his wife has a hearing problem or just wasn't listening to him, he wanted to find out. And so he decides to come up behind her, stands a little bit away, and he says to her, honey, can you hear me? No response. So he steps a little closer, behind her, repeats it, right? Honey, can you hear me? Still no response. And he moves right behind her, right into her ear and says, honey, can you hear me? And now the response he hears is, for the third time, yes. Well, it's never us, right? We always think the other person is the problem. Yes, honey, can you hear me? Well, I imagine the chicken, the bear, the elephant, and all the other animals from our time for all ages, they all considered themselves good listeners in their own way, right? Despite the fact that none of them truly listened to Taylor, except for the rabbit, of course. So what gets in the way of deep listening other than bad earsight? No, hearing. The Time for All Ages offered some great insights. Right? The chicken. Remember the chicken? Talk, 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 he said. And the bear focused on anger. The element was ready to fix everything and remember. The hyena started laughing. The ostrich pretended nothing ever really happened. The kangaroo advised to throw it all away, and the snake, remember the snake? Oh yeah, the snake suggested to go down, suggested to mess up somebody else's life, basically. None of them made Taylor feel listened to, heard, even though later Taylor did all those things with the rabbit, right? He shouted, he laughed, he pretended to have nothing have happened, all those things. What got in the way? They each had their own agenda. That's what got in the way, I think. When we bring our own agenda to listening, it becomes impossible to listen deeply. When we want them to feel a certain way, the other person, the person that's speaking, if we want them to feel a certain way, when we want to impress them, to get approval, when we want their energy, their time, their money, when we want to show them that we are right, that we are knowledgeable, that we are right most of the time, that we're clever, it gets in the way. As Tara Brach mentions, whenever our own agenda shows up, our lens begins to narrow, and we can't take in what's really happening, the person or the situation. To listen well, we have to surrender our own agenda, let go of the attachments we bring to this moment, bring to the moment. I know from experience how hard it is to combine a call intended to raise funds with a call focused on deep listening. Have you ever tried to do that? Right? If you're picking up the phone and you really have an agenda, the question around, how are you? And really meaning that? It's not impossible, but it becomes harder, right? Because at least I feel there's often then that sense of, oh yeah, I really had another agenda that I now need to find my way back to, right, as I'm listening. Well, I know better to not even try sometimes, right? Can you think of a recent conversation that masqueraded as deep listening when really you had a wanting agenda, something you wanted? How did that agenda narrow the lens, interfere with being fully there, with truly listening? And there's more that gets in the way, like, oh no, I don't have time for that right now. Not now, not to listen. Ugh. And this is one of the many aversions we may feel, aversions we would need to let go to listen deeply. Aversions like feeling bored or intimidated, feeling anxious about something else, something beyond the now, beyond this here. judgment, the big one, right? Feeling judgmental towards the person, perhaps feeling superior and therefore disinterested. What does that person have to offer me? Or inferior, and therefore not free to really take in what is being impressed, too overwhelmed. It takes practice to surrender these aversions. Listening as an act of surrender is a good training ground. What do we notice? How the aversions affect our listening, our potential to understand and connect. And then there's what Tara Brach calls the fear of not being here. Fear of not being here. When someone speaks, we so easily get uncomfortable and embarrassed when we don't have anything readily or ready to say back. We don't know who we are when we're not planning our response. So often we don't listen to understand, we listen to reply. So often we don't listen to understand, we listen to reply. Mark Nepo reminds us that to listen is to lean in softly with a willingness to be changed by what we hear. In other words, listening requires an act of surrender so that we can then re-emerge and ask how what we have heard will shape our new reality. Rabbit surrendered when he encountered Taylor so he could be fully present and listen. He didn't have his own agenda. There was nothing he wanted from Taylor, and he didn't let anything distract him from being with Taylor. No judgment, no anxiety, no disinterest. Yet later, reflecting on his experience, perhaps he did find himself changed. He might have noticed the importance of cultivating good friends. He might have recognized Taylor's experience as part of a systemic problem. He might have remembered how much he loved to be silent or to belly laugh, and how much both depend on acts of surrender. It is not easy to surrender, to let go. Our culture does not typically train us or encourage us to head in that direction. And yet I find whenever I dare to let go and follow that pathway of surrender, that my anxiety, my fear, my anger, all those negative feelings do diminish, while my being at ease, my ability to love, and my caring for other people, caring for myself, become just so much more routine, more regular. And at least some of those around me seem to feel the same. May it be similarly so for you. Amen. Our community plate last week raised a beautiful $585 for the New Hampshire Food Bank. Thank you so very much. This Sunday's plate will go to the UUA, the Unitarian Universalist Association's Disaster Relief Fund, which assists UU congregations and their communities in recovering from crises, including natural disasters like wildfires or hurricanes, human-caused disasters like unsafe drinking water, and now the COVID-19 pandemic. The Disaster Relief Fund is part of a promise a covenant between the UUA and its member congregations, between congregations who give generously and those who experience a need, and with our community partners. Through aiding congregations, their members, and their community partners, we are able to embody our faith and our values. One such example is how Portland, Oregon congregation is supporting its community partners that focus on marginalized communities which are particularly hard hit by the wildfire crisis, including immigrants, farm workers, and the LGBTQ community of youth. I invite you to be as generous as you can and support our UUA Disaster Relief Fund this morning. May we be transformed by our giving. May the world be transformed by our gifts. Please join me now in our closing hymn, number 298, in our gray hymnals, 298, Wake Now My Senses, with a special recording this morning.
Wake now my senses and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in all. Keep with the web of creation your vow. Giving, receiving as love shows us how. Wake now, my reason, reach out to the new. Join with each pilgrim who quests for the true. Honor the beauty and wisdom of time. Suffer thy limit and praise the sublime. Wake now, compassion, give heed to the cry. Voices of suffering fill the wide sky. Take as your neighbor both stranger and friend, praying and striving their hardship to end. Wake now, my conscience, with justice thy guide. Join with all people whose rights are denied. Take not for granted a privileged place. God's love embraces the whole human race. Wake now, my vision of ministry clear. Brighten my pathway with radiance here. Mingle my calling with all who will share. Work toward a planet transformed by our care.
With our vision awake and our conscience alive, with compassion attentive and reason alert, with our senses aware of deep power within, may the awareness that's listening connect us, liberate us, bring us peace within and the world our love. And may kindness be always at the center of our hearts. I now invite you to extinguish your chalice at home as I extinguish our chalice here in the sanctuary. Please join me now in reading aloud the words that are on your screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of this faith we share, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Now join me, please, in singing our unison benediction. There are people in your bubble willing to join hands with you, great. Go ahead and reach out to you. And if not, reach out with your heart to all of us, everyone here worshiping with you, knowing that you are not alone. Let us sing.
From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live.
Let us go in peace and let our service continue.